Hello, my name is Maurice Washington. I want to welcome everybody to another episode of Executive Talk. Those that are watching live and those that are listening later on our podcast, thank you so much for joining us. Right now, you're in part 3 of our series of Gaslighting Destroys Infrastructure. As anybody as a first-time viewer, I advise you to go check out the first 2 to make sure you have a good concept as to what we're talking about, so that way you can catch up on context as to today's conversation. But ultimately, you're here for today, so we're just going to go ahead and make it as clear as possible, and we'll do the rest. So let's go ahead and get into it right now and start talking about this and pick up right where we left off. In part 2, what we did is we talked about the enemy and the development of gaslighting in your life. It is essential to the enemy's kingdom. If you don't understand anything else, you must be gaslit first before you go out into this world. So understand this. This is a very huge piece of the puzzle to our spiritual lives. Again, when it comes to business, it's about your spiritual life just as much. You don't get to compartmentalize the spiritual world. It's wherever you are, and as long as you're alive, the spiritual world is with you. So when we ended last conversation, the enemy's job is to develop an infrastructure. It's to develop a culture, develop a kingdom. And the gaslit culture of the enemy's kingdom has been built by us. The enemy needed us just as much as God needed us to build his kingdom. The enemy wants that same kingdomship. And that's exactly what we have done for him. Let's be very clear. When you turn on the news, it's one thing for us to look at the news and say, wow, I can't believe this is happening. Wow, I can't believe that divorce is happening. Wow, I can't believe that company did that to those employees. Wow, I can't believe those employees did that to the business owner, because we're all operating under a gaslit kingdom. We have not obeyed what God's intentions were. So if you don't obey the vision, well, then you're going to get a different vision, and this is a different vision. So I want to make sure that we understand specifically we're not okay to sit here and say we don't understand why the world is what it is. God has already told us, but this is why it is, because we have built it. We have decided not to reject God. And ultimately, through this process, the part of it is God actually, in the Bible, he talks about us being lost. He came to find the lost. Of course, there's a scripture for it, but nonetheless, I'll bring that up in part 4. But the primary reason why gaslighting is so traumatizing is the fact that when you end up lost, when you're in this lost state of being, meaning you don't even know why you're here, everybody's actually looking for a purpose. Everybody needs a purpose. That's why you look for it. Because without purpose, you're just out. You're just out here. It's too much creativity. You're built a specific way. You have a specific way. You have a spiritual gifting within you. Every single last person does to glorify God, and then also help others. But when you're lost, all you're stuck with is your spiritual gifting and creativity, but you don't know how to actually use it in the right way, because the gaslit spirit is a spirit that doesn't know itself. So when I mention you don't know why you're here, you're struggling with purpose. There's nothing worse than actually to walk around the day to day and not know your purpose. Again, I'll be the first one to admit, earlier in my years, I had no clue. Hence the reason why I had all kinds of job titles, all kinds of different positions, and all kinds of different jobs. I went here, I went there, did this, did that. I was searching. Okay? The only thing that you can search for when you're an adult and you're trying to get this independence is money. You're trying to secure yourself, and you're trying to create whatever it is that you know best through your own human wisdom. But the key is, as long as you don't know why you're here, you will make mistake after mistake after mistake. And that is the primary reason that the enemy needs to keep you in a gaslit position, because the more on purpose you're walking in, the more sinful you'll do, the more sins you'll create. The gaslit temple is important. I want to make sure everybody listens to this. As long as your brain the way that your perspective is, the way that your heart is, your heart condition, the way that your actions and your feet, the way that you move. As long as the temple is broke, you're broken. So as long as your mind is, as long as your mind and your wisdom is drawing from death, from your flesh, in order to corrupt decision making and also the rest of your temple. The mind is very central key to this. Remember, gaslighting is a manipulation of the mind. So that way you make wrong decisions. So that way you see things in which goes to your eyes. That way your perspective of things is off as well. Okay, the eyes are the keys to the body. As long as the eyes are healthy, the healthier your decisions will be. But that comes from how your mind, what wisdom you're operating from. But your eyes need to be healthy, which leads into perspective. Your perception must be drawn from death and flesh in order to corrupt how you perceive life and your actions. Gaslit people always justify themselves. They're never remorseful. They have no apology in them because the way that they see it, the way that they're operating is in a justified manner. As long as you're justified in your actions, as long as you don't feel sinful, you're gaslit. You will always, again, remain always constantly sinning from that because you're operating in a place that you should not be in. God is trying to deliver you from that place. Your heart, the spirit must be dead. The enemy must darken your spirit so you feel no conviction and also a self-righteous heart. Your self-righteous heart is a hardened heart. You'll read that in the Old Testament. It shows itself in multiple different ways throughout the Bible. But a hard heart, it must not be vulnerable. It must be hurt. It must be in pain. It must receive pain in order to have that information go to the brain. So that way, again, it shuts everything else down. And last but not least, your feet, how you move, your actions, and the fruit you bear results in the pain and manipulation of others. You must move in the freedom of lawlessness. So the enemy needs you to move lawless. There's such a freedom. I encourage you to go look at our freedom series. Anything outside of God's kingdom, anything outside of God's provision is lawless actions. So understand that there's a specific bubble he had mankind in. But when you don't walk in that bubble, understand you are in that place. But again, your feet don't know, they don't have any brain to them. They're connected to how you think. They're moving just exactly when you say. They're built to actually go the direction that were meant to do. But when you're not operating in that way, the feet will go whatever direction you're supposed to go. So your innocence. As long as you don't have your innocence with you, as long as you feel shame, as long as you're in that place, your innocence, that is a humble place. As long as you feel shame, as long as you feel dirty, as long as you feel like you have something going on, you're corrupted. There is something, because that's the key with holiness. Holiness actually is connected to innocence. When you operate, that's why you say don't be acting all innocent. When people are saying that, they're saying don't act all holy. Okay, the truth is you're supposed to walk in holiness because you're supposed to walk in innocence. You're supposed to walk in blamelessness. But as long as I corrupt your innocence, you will constantly walk in that place. Your reality must be corrupted. Bad decisions corrupt your reality. They corrupt how you think, and also they corrupt how you see. But you have to be gaslit. You have to think that what you do is okay. You can't be walking around thinking that this is wrong. And you may even have those moments, and that's the weird thing about us, is that the spirit will convict us, but we'll justify it and wash ourselves off. No different than a cat licks his fur and says, I'm clean. Okay, so understand that's how we do things. That changes your reality to make sure that you're always gaslit from that perspective. Your vulnerability. The enemy does not want you to feel vulnerable. This is why everybody is extra protective over themselves. There's nothing wrong with it. The Bible says, guard your heart above all else, right? So that is true. But understand you're supposed to guard it with God's word, not with your own wisdom. Because with your own wisdom, what you're saying is, I'm going to control things. It turns you into something else. You see how that changes your vulnerability. Once you hurt, you start to, again, make decisions on your own. Fidelity, your holiness. As long as your body and mind is, as long as they don't respond to God, when God says no, you're under gaslighting. Because that means that you're under lawlessness. You're not under instruction anymore. So your fidelity is gone. People require that from you. The trust, that interaction between mankind. As I get older, one thing I'm learning, the amount of trust people desire from you is exorbitant. When you call a customer service, when you call a company, you don't know who they are. You just know you like what they have. But you're trusting that this product is going to work the way that it is supposed to work. But you're also trusting that if it doesn't, you can call them and they're going to fix it. See, that's the amount of trust and that we look for out of folks. So by no means say that this not, that you don't need to trust anybody. Understand, when we're interacting with folks, you're hoping that this is what it's supposed to be. That's why gaslighting kills infrastructure. There's a lot of blind trust that goes along with the day. Because there's everybody within any infrastructure that you have, people are involved. So ultimately, this is the root to your dysfunction. That was my root to my dysfunction. That's why I needed God. I understand where I was gaslit early in my years, and I can understand how it perpetuated itself in my adult years. But understand this, folks, your dysfunction, the things that you're struggling with, because the thing about life, you'll keep yourself busy, so that way you don't think that you have a dysfunction. That's what busyness really is. Because the Bible talks about being busybodies instead of moving forward. Okay, so it's a perception of looking busy, but it's not really what you're doing. It's not really taking you anywhere. So that is where that busybody comes from, and that's where that gaslighting operates. But that's the root to the dysfunction, is there's an underlying gaslighting that is occurring. In this place, you're the root to the enemy's kingdom. He needs you to be in this place. This is a root. A dysfunction is the function of the enemy's kingdom. So by no means does the enemy need you to be functional. Just because you're wise in your own eyes, you make semi-good decisions in that place, does not mean you're operating in God's will. There's a difference, folks. Your own wisdom does not count in this moment. Your own wisdom is glorious to the enemy, because that's a place where God said no. Don't gaslight yourself in this moment. Remember, God said, move away from evil. Do not be wise in your own eyes. Do not. He didn't say, there's a key for your wisdom. You want to be smart. You want to make smart decisions. But when you're controlling your own life, and that's the operation, understand there's the root. It's a very weird line there, folks, but it definitely does exist to God. You're the keys to the nature of destruction, and you're the key to the enemy's nature of destruction being duplicated on earth. When you're under gaslighting, and if you're gaslit yourself personally, you're becoming a destructive being, because remember, you're becoming untrustworthy in things that you're doing. Your trauma, all those things, those are leading up to the destruction that you're about to take place. Remember, the enemy is not waiting until you turn 18 and you become an adult. He's working on you when you're first born. He's working on you through your parents. So as long as you get that pain earlier in your years, and you don't recognize where it's coming from, or you don't recognize that you do have pain, you become a destructive force out there. But that destruction must be duplicated on earth. Again, the enemy is a copycat. God set kingdom on earth. The enemy is going to create his kingdom on earth. Being under spiritual gaslighting is a stronghold. It is one of those things that you can't go to therapy under and have them fixed. You can get some answers, but it's a gaslighting. It is a central core issue, folks. It is a central breakup between you and God. Because remember, when the enemy came to Eve, and also it went through to Adam, it broke the infrastructure between mankind and God. So this is why this stronghold is a central core, and it destroys the infrastructure. You have to get this reconciled with God himself. So then here's what happens when a person is under this type of stronghold. You will spend your days fighting illusions. Illusions is important to the enemy. The reason why, as long as you fight illusions, as long as you operate in your own wisdom, you're operating under illusions as to how things should go. You will recreate those and you have to chase it down because you're operating on your own trail. So understand this is the stronghold. The key to the enemy is because he understands creativity. He understands that you will constantly create and create and create again more infrastructure for it to be broken down. But as long as you get lost in your infrastructure that you develop, and you'll create illusions off of that, you'll actually spend more time thinking about those illusions than actually returning back to God. You see the manipulation tactic right there. You see the destructive tactic. As long as you're gaslit and chasing after waterfalls, for lack of better terms, you're chasing over there, and people will call it, kind of squirrel brain. Well, that's because you're chasing illusions. You're over here, you're over there. That's the true dysfunction of gaslit. You can't stay on your purpose. The enemy will also create fear, because one thing along the way is you'll create bad decisions. One thing about bad decisions is you won't tell anybody that you did it, but your spirit knows that you did it. And once your spirit knows that you did it, you actually create more fear on the next decision that you make. The issue is that you create compound interest on these bad decisions. So that way you are more and more fearful. Here's how that fear works. It will be so strong that you'll be fearful to actually take your bad decisions to God. That's why a lot of people don't return back to him. Because you actually know you're not doing right. See, it's one of those looks. Again, one of my best friends, we had a conversation, and you can look at somebody and say, without even saying anything, you're doing wrong. See, there's nobody that doesn't not know what they're not doing. But when you gaslight yourself, you will recreate more and more things to make sure that you don't feel you're wrong. So that way you don't tap into that fear. But guess what? Everybody has a quiet time, and they will find you. Now, here's one of those things that happen. In this place, there actually is a character identity, abandonment, rejection. These are some of the root things that actually develops in emotions, and this fear creates this. As long as you have this abandonment and rejection in you, the reason why the enemy wants shaming you in something else, because that's another deflection point. This actually provides reason for why you're doing it instead of knowing that you're spiritually gaslit. That's why the enemy wants pain. He wants trauma. He wants suffering. He introduced trauma to Adam and Eve first and foremost. They felt abandonment. There was that rejection there. There was, right? Because of their bad decision. God never rejected them. That's why in the Bible, he has to always remind us, I will not reject you. Why? Because of the spirit of rejection. But once you operate under gaslighting and that fear kicks in, those abandonment things, because again, you've been gone with God for too long. And then now on earth, you've experienced some abandonment. So now you have this control issue. Now you have this rejection issue when you get older. Why? Because now that thing is growing stronger. Now it's growing stronger because you're worshiping it. And what you're worshiping, now that you have, remember, God said, no false gods before me. And this is in Exodus, and that is one of the first commandments that he gives us, doesn't he? But once you have these things, once you have abandonment and rejection, and you're protecting it, and you're using that as your source, that is your source, that is your God, that is your false God before God. God, the enemy understands this. God cannot be mocked. So your tongue cannot supersede who you actually are and where you actually are spiritually. Which places you in idolatry. So this is the character build in which the enemy gets you. Now, why am I saying all these things? Number one, to make sure that you understand the pattern in which this developed. But number two, to understand this is your adult years. This is you at 18. This is you growing into it up until the age of 18. This is you now going out into the world and seeing the world how you want to establish it, while still looking for a purpose, while still going through your stuff, while still trying to find your wife, while still trying to find your husband, while becoming a parent, while becoming a business owner, while becoming an employee. So this is who you are and how you're showing up to society. No matter how sweet and how kind you think you are, this is truly your character at bay. Everything is spiritual first, you second. So now we will draw from others and be drawn towards others that have the same gaslit spirit as you. This is very important because, again, a lot of us, one of the things that we do in high school is, we want to be popular. We want to have a lot of friends. We want to be connected. We want to network. We always say this thing called like-minded. But you got to understand, if you're like-minded to somebody else that's gaslit, that's what your like-minded looks like. Majority of your friends probably are still under gaslighting. These may be some of your closest folks. Some of your closest, and your inner draw is your gaslit state of being. That's what drawn everybody to you. So you're trying to figure out why all the people that you meet are doing this. Well, you're understanding that you're drawing in a gaslit component because that's where you are, time and space. You can only draw in what you're closest to spiritually. So now when we look at this is why the enemy starts to play his part. This is the same way marriages are built, families are built, friendships are built, and companies are built. These are all infrastructures, folks. That's why I want to pause right there and make sure that you take in this point. That's why I always talk about all these different places in your marriage, in your family, in your business, because they're all infrastructures. Everything you do has an infrastructure attachment to it, and you're somewhere in it. I don't care if you're just an employee, you're in that infrastructure. You're part of that infrastructure, and why it's either breaking or functioning. Okay? So your family, they depend on you, but understand this is how you're coming into this world as far as 18 is concerned. This is how you're presenting yourself. And in these situations, this is why you say, my family sure is crazy. I mean, it's cute, it's fun to laugh at, and so on and so forth, and have these conversations and scratch your head. But it's not so pretty when you have those family arguments, huh? It's not so pretty when that volcano finally reaches to the top and it spills over. It's not so cute, is it? Because now, guess what? Nobody's getting together for family dinner, are they? Yeah, that infrastructure starts to break. But everybody takes for granted the fact of, well, just because that's my cousin, it's supposed to operate this way. There's a higher level into way is how it's supposed to operate. But your gaslit personality, things that you have going on inside, is what people are going to respond to the most. See, what's interesting about us is that we'll judge somebody else's gaslit place and place of being, but we won't judge ours. See, that's where we are, and that's who we become out here. This is why we can't function. That's why these infrastructures break down. What's common in people with these infrastructures is they're all the dedication to the world. Majority of us have conformed to the patterns of this world. Now, when I say that majority of us, that means the majority of us have not given our whole lives and submitted our lives back to God. That means your dedication is still to this world. You're dedicated to something. God cannot be mocked. And make sure I repeat that, because again, we can say whatever, but understand this is before you pass, folks. Make sure that it is absolute, as absolute as you can possibly get it. But our dedication may be to the world. You might want to check that. All these infrastructures that these families and so on and so forth, and these companies and employees and all this other stuff is all based off of worldly wisdom. That's why we're seeing, again, I refer back to the news. Go look at the news. I'll be the first one to admit, again, I used to say, man, life is so crazy. I can't believe it. Once I keep on doing this show, I talk about and have these conversations, I absolutely understand it. It's worldly wisdom. It's when we're outside of purpose and we create our own purpose, you're going to get worldly wisdom type of companies. In James 3:14-16. But if you harbor bitter envy and selfish ambition in your hearts, do not boast about or deny the truth. Such wisdom does not come down from heaven, but is earthly, unspiritual, demonic. For where you have envy and selfish ambition, you will find disorder in every evil practice. You see that? See, the word has already told you as to what we're seeing on the news, what we're seeing in the world, what you're experiencing with your husband, what you're experiencing with your wife. You're experiencing worldly wisdom. If you're operating under worldly wisdom, are you under truth or are you gaslit? You're gaslit. I hope we're all making the connection here and we're coming to truth in this moment. So this is exactly how he explains it. That's exactly how God sees it. And he is the creator. This is God's word. This is how it's showing up. In Ephesians 6:12, for our struggle is not against flesh and blood, but against the rulers, against the authorities, against the powers in the dark world, and against the spiritual forces of evil in heavenly realms. I'm not mad at you, Bob. It's your spirit. I'm not mad at you, Susie. It's your spirit. Right? I'm not fighting against you. It's your spirit and your personal place that you're in. Your spiritual place that you're sitting in is what's bothering me. Okay? But we talked about it in high places. Now, those heavenly places, let's talk about it from an infrastructure level. These high places are your parents. Are you being a parent? Are you as a mother? As you as a father? You're in a high place, folks. As you as a business leader. As you as a manager. As you as an employee. As you're going out golfing with your buddies. Because you're in somebody else's life. You're in a high place. As long as people allow you close to them, you're in a high place in somebody's life. I want to make sure we break that down and understand. You're always walking around in some way, shape, or form in a high place. When you're driving, you're in a high place. I'm hoping that you're truthful enough to do the right thing. If you're gaslighting, you're angry, and you're going through it, that's where road rage kicks in. There's nothing stopping you from being on the other side of the fence and doing something and tearing up my life. There's nothing stopping me. In the same thing with me. You're expecting me to be of a certain way with you if I'm in your life. It's a high place. So understand, folks, we're walking around risking everything. We are in a vulnerable situation. As soon as we walk out the door, the safest place that we have potentially is your home. And that is almost to the point where if you're just by yourself, because, the homes are getting a little, the enemy will not just compartmentalize destruction. He wants it everywhere. But remember, the key word in this conversation is the gaslighting and also destroys. Listen to the patterns in which I'm talking about the destruction can occur. In 2 Timothy 4:3, for the time will come when people will not put up with sound doctrine. Instead, to suit their own desires, they will gather around a great number of teachers to say what their itching ears want to hear. Okay. Let me break this down for you. If you're gaslit long enough and you got a pattern of being gaslit and you see some success and here's a good example. Whenever you watch a movie, and let's say you watch a mob movie, you ever notice, do they ever go look for truthful people? Do they ever look for people who are wise and that want to do the right thing in the right moment? Right? Do they go look for lawyers that, stand up for justice and so on and so forth? No, you never notice that. Why? Because they're picking up a great number of teachers to suit their own, so that way nobody gets them guilt. You're only guilty if you hurt them. But again, you have to be under gaslighting to be part of the mob. You have to be under gaslighting to be on the in crowd of somebody who's doing wrong. And this is the times that we're in. The times have been there, but it's getting worse and it's getting stronger. And it says, for the time will come when people will not put up with sound doctrine. So the enemy has developed us and destroyed us so bad that I can tell you this. I can be spot on. Or you can go to church, you can go to whatever, but you won't take it in. Because gaslighting has become such a new norm to everyday life. The world has become the new norm, not the kingdom, not God's kingdom. The new norm is to reject God. And so this is why the scripture is so timely, is because, again, for the time will come when people will not put up with sound doctrine. So you may not even like what I have to say just based on the fact that you might be under that place. Instead, to suit their own desires, again, their own desires. The enemy has you on the other side of the fence, and your own desires are bigger than God's desires. You have become idol. This is where idolatry kicks in. This is how you know. To suit your own desires. That is key there. They will gather. So again, you're going to gather an infrastructure. You will create an infrastructure that loves what you do. Okay? A great number of them to make sure, hey, you won't. That's where you'll hear, don't judge me. Don't judge me. Don't, right? That is actually an agreement. I know I'm doing wrong. Just don't judge me. Just let me do it. Just, right? Give me edify what I'm doing. Tell me I'm doing right, regardless of what I'm doing wrong. I'm right. It's me. It's us versus them. It's men versus women. It's women versus men. Right? You don't have to have truth in that scenario. See, gaslighting, it destroys the infrastructure, but also will create its own infrastructure of those that are gaslit as well. This is why we see the pain that we see in the workforce. Next is to our business owners. I want to make sure that we understand something when it comes to business ownership. Understand that we're part of trade. Understand at some point you could be very good at something, but it may not be your exact purpose. There is a part of this, again, if you're operating under your own wisdom, you're trying to figure out a way to make your revenue, and there's a specific way. Let's just be really clear. Okay? God has not called that to you. You called it to yourself. But a message to business owners: understand you put yourself in a high position. Remember, just that scripture that we talked about, we don't battle against flesh and blood, against spirits and principalities in high places. You put yourself in a high place. That's amazing. That's creative. That's very, very risky on a lot of levels. So I'm always for business owners. But at the same token, we have a huge responsibility. We never stopped and checked to see what God says. Remember, God is not about how much money you make. He's about where your spirit is and where you got the money from. You're operating under power. This is the big deal, folks. This is the big deal. This is why you being a business owner and a leader is amazing, but you have no idea how much power you operating in, how much influence over a person you have. You're envied on one level, but you're also feared on another level. Those envy and fear, between the balance of both of those, you got to understand that there is something that collides within folks that makes you want to do certain things. You can lose yourself with this power that you currently have. So since you're operating under this power, understand these businesses are built by our wisdom. So that means you created it. You were able to be successful enough. You also got to the point where in that success, you're able to hire some folks. You feel pretty good about yourself. That is actually a very good feat, that you're able to take your own wisdom, create something, make some revenue, and also be able to afford to hire somebody and put them in a position. That makes you feel really good, and as it should. However, remember the power and the influence that takes place when you're in there. Remember what stuff happens to your mind. Remember when people said, "Don't let success go to your head." Well, you never know when it goes to your head. You don't know how quick pride takes place. As much as you feel like you have a hold on it, you really don't. We have the ability to fire, um, conduct businesses. These are all actions from our creation. We're able to fire, we're able to hire, conduct business. We're able to do these things. These are all actions that we're able to function with our creation. Again, good, but also dangerous. Just the fact that you're able to hire, you're able to uh, enact something with folks. You're able to give a person a spirit, a purpose. You also have the ability to fire. You can fire them on the day when everything else has gone bad, and all of a sudden you're fired. They're fired. You can create so much doubt in the individual. It's not even funny. But again, you have this influence that comes with that power that you're operating in. You can conduct business. You can, make some things happen. You can really demolish somebody else's business. And so think about the power and influence that you're operating in and at what level. In Proverbs 3:7, it reads, "Do not be wise in your own eyes. Fear the Lord and shun evil." You're too late now. Unfortunately, your wisdom has got the best of you. Pride has got the best of you. And now you're already doing it. You're already in deep. The enemy, again, wants quick operation. He wants that. Again, as long as you don't understand what you're doing, and as long as you're operating in pride, he needs you in there. That's part of the gaslighting. That's part of the development of the destruction. So we see in Psalms 127:1, "Unless the Lord builds the house, the builders labor in vain. Unless the Lord watches over the city, the guards stand watch in vain." So remember, seek ye first the kingdom and his righteousness, and these things will be added on to you. So if that is not operating in that fashion, remember, it's not about how you see it, it's about how God sees it. So unless the Lord builds it, the builders labor in vain. That's what I talked about. You're in power. You might be slipping into pride, folks, and you might be building in vain. We are creating from our own wisdom. We're accountable for everything that happens in our business as well. The destruction and the gaslighting, the bloodshed, the emotional bloodshed that you can create in folks is astronomical, as you already know. It is not a small feat. So understand you're responsible for how those things function. Our spirit becomes boastful, which slips us right into idolatry with the Lord. This is not good. We become boastful. We become good. It's a nice dinner table. Yeah, I own, 5 different KFCs across the nation over there. I'm just doing, everything's fantastic. Employees say, right, you've gone somewhere. Your success has already hit your head, and you don't even understand it, or it has taken over your tongue. The characteristics of gaslighting, and I looked this up as my source on the internet, as to what do people in the workforce consider gaslighting. Gaslighting, denying reality. This is very huge. Remember, you're on this trust factor when it comes to employees. They're trusting everything that you're saying is gospel. Okay, your word, as a matter of fact, your word is actually sometimes bigger than God's. Did you know that? I'll explain to you in a minute how that works. Denying reality. So you can really manipulate and gaslight somebody's mind by denying reality as to how, I turned in that project. Oh, I never received it. You know what? You don't really respond to emails the way that you used to. I used to be really responsive. Are you okay? Employee's gone. You're like, what do you mean? Right? People will take that home with them. They will take that home with them. And then they'll do extra come Monday. Like, well, maybe I'm off. When they know good and well they're not. But because you are using that power, all right, it becomes an abuse. Shifting blame, micromanaging, moving goalposts. Hey, you know what? You almost got it. Just keep on going. Good and well they've already achieved the goal, but you created something else. Okay, now you're making something impossible, trying to think that you're a good teacher. Withholding information, that's a huge one. That's another gaslighting. So now you have people trying to figure out what's going on, and things are just happening to them, which is causing resentment within. Passive aggressive behavior. Okay, these are all characteristics of gaslighting that, again, I searched for them on the internet. I'm sure you can find some more, but just the tip of the iceberg, and these can be found anywhere. These are all emotional, abusive, mental manipulation that happens to people. In James 5, 1-6, it reads, and this is important. Now listen, you rich people, weep and wail because of the misery that is coming on you. Your wealth has rotted, and the moths have eaten your clothes. Your gold and silver are corroded. Their corrosion will testify against you and eat your flesh like fire. You have hoarded wealth in the last days. Look, the wages you failed to pay the workers who mowed your fields and crying out against you. The cries of the harvesters have reached the ears of the Lord Almighty. You have lived the earth in luxury and self-indulgence. You have fattened yourselves in the day of slaughter. You have condemned and murdered in the innocent one who is not opposing you. Typically you're not going to hear that in church. That doesn't really sound something that you want to go to church to hear. But here at Executive Talk, we're here to not gaslight. We're here to tell you exactly where you stand. Remember, this is your business ownership. That has nothing to do with how God sees things. If you labored in vain, if you're gaslighting your employees, if you're having them walk on eggshells, if you're withholding information, if you're hiring and firing, if you're making your job just uh, unbearable. This is why these scriptures come into play. See, the enemy will make sure that you don't operate this way, and but understand where God sits. Remember, God is looking at innocence. This is God's justice. To be quite transparent, we talk about God's justice. It happens in real time. The older I get, the older I understand where God's justice sits. And again, there's people who. So when here's the place that you have to be cautious of. The wages you failed to pay the workers who mowed your fields are crying out against you. So now, in this place, that is specifically talking about when obviously that's financial. But what else happens with you if I don't trust what's going on? If I'm starting to feel insecure when I come from your office? If you leave me on eggshells, if you have really messed with my brain and I'm praying to God, God's like, oh, why are you praying this prayer? Let me see, where do you work? Oh, I see. And it's not about where you work, who you work with. Who's the boss? Who's this person that's having you feel this way? Oh, I know exactly. Yeah, I know who that is. That's what I'm talking about as far as the prayers have reached the cries. He hears those cries. He hears what's going on because again, and that's one thing that we want to understand about people. Yeah, you keep on doing dirty work, but understand somebody has prayed about you to God, and not in a positive way. Again, remember, this is not whatever infrastructure that you're in. Parent, mother, father, husband, wife, boss, employee. Understand, you're in high places. You have this ability, you have this power, you have this influence. It comes with a price, folks, because you're operating under the guise of this is God's kid first. This is God's son first. This is God's daughter first. Just because they work for you does not mean you have power over them. You don't have the ultimate say so. So remember that as you go about, God's justice is everywhere. Understand this, on earth, it might be a good business decision to lay off employees and increase profits for shareholders. It might be. It may make sense. It may increase your coin a little bit more than what it was. It may make your books look a little bit better. It may save you a little bit of money, at the end of the year. But understand that scripture, folks. These are the people who have busted their butt to work for you, to make sure that they can provide for their families because, again, they're coming to you. Now, remember what I said earlier. Wherever there's greed and selfish ambition, there you will find disorder. So understand that this disorder is, here's actually a part of this disorder between employers and employees. Remember when we hire people, this is another thought. There's a 99% chance you're hiring people who don't depend on God for their security. They put you in that position, which again, I'm going to get to the employees next. The first answer is, well, they should have did the right thing. They should have been worshiping God, not me. That's easier said than done because ultimately that's the same statement that I should be making towards the business owners. But understand, in this power position, this is where people find their comfort in what they see. They find comfort in you. You said that you'll provide stability, a stable environment, and you understand that this is what they're depending on. They're building their own lifestyle based off of this. And so your decisions have a lot of weight on people that you don't even know, on their wives, on their husbands, on their kids. So hiring is just not about being the business owner. It's a power that you have that extends all the way down. As a matter of fact, it's this bad, folks. let's say you do want to just fire somebody and you have a big massive layoff. You now have caused strife in that person's marriage, which may have broken their infrastructure, because that maybe the last word was, you have one more broken job, I got to leave, I just can't trust you. Well, that person has been there for 2 years, has done everything up underneath the sun, the marriage is finally gone, and all of a sudden, so the decision making on where that person is being hired and what they're doing is now affecting that. Now, is that your responsibility, their home life? No. But understand, this comes with a lot. So now, what does that make you, Mr. or Mrs. Business Owner? Their idol, their God. It's unfair to be in that position. It's unfair to be looking that way, because that's not what your intentions were. You're absolutely correct, and they should not. But let's be realistic. This is how life goes. This is that worldly creation that we're talking about. And this is part of operating on your own wisdom, and this is exactly how you slip into it. You accidentally slipped into a place by operating on your own wisdom. Now you may have accidentally slipped under judgment. Be careful on how you operate. This is spiritual first, and what shows up here is next. Now, when you develop an infrastructure, remember, the bigger you become, the more you lose sight on mankind and focus on money as your idol. So you as a business owner, and yes, it does sound like I'm coming at you quite a bit, just stay with me. But let's say you do hire this good infrastructure. Let's say your own wisdom is really working. It's churning. Now you start making a massive amount. You got investors coming your way. Remember, you start looking at people as money. I'm hiring you to create more. You're already in idolatry. Be careful on how your focus shifts, because now you're under gaslighting your own, because now you're worshiping money. And now this is where you'll do little manipulative things to your employees, because you're trying to draw in extra coin. You'll gaslight. You'll tell them. You'll start creating favoritism. You'll start doing these things within your office space that start to devalue folks and say, "Hey, you're higher. You're smarter than XYZ, so you come with me on here." Understand that once that money starts talking, because one thing about, and again, we'll have a show on this, but as everybody knows, when you worship money, money actually starts talking to you. And the first thing it says to you is how to make more, and that you never have enough. Employees, you didn't bring your honesty to the table, did you? So now we're talking about employees now. I hope that was a good start for the employers, something for you to think about. But employees, it's your turn. Did you bring your honesty to the table? So now, see, we aren't going to a job because that's where we're called to be. We're choosing based off of lifestyle, comfort, and security. So as an employee, I'm going to tell you whatever it takes to get you to hire me, so I can say, "Hey, got a job. Let's go out of town. Let's have this free time. How many vacation days do I have? How many?" You want to live a certain lifestyle. You want to kind of have your cake and eat it too. You weren't called to this job. It suited your lifestyle more than anything. And so there's a comfort and security to it. So that's why you took it. Are you giving your all to this? No, because you're giving half of yourself as compartmentalized. I'm not telling you to worship the job, but again, in the back of your mind, you just wanted the freedom. That's just kind of what you wanted. And so you're only giving this guy or gal your half energy based on the fact that you're not fully invested. Our daily choices lead us astray into the statement, I don't do what I want to do, I do what I have to do. So understand, that's the security statement. There's nothing wrong with doing what you have to do. You get it. You have to make money. You have to live. You have to secure yourself. You have to keep this thing moving. But you got to understand your gaslit lifestyle is causing decisions that you didn't necessarily need it to make in the first place. And so now you're into this cycle. And again, I'm not speaking to say any kind of hierarchy on my end. Of course, that's what, again, God had to break everything because I was operating in my own wisdom. So I found jobs and created companies just based off of my own wisdom, trying to make money. So I'm doing what I have to do to try to make some things work. God is calling us to follow his lead. But this is where we get led astray. This is how we get stuck into a mindset as employees. You lose yourself. Because you're not looking for a job based on because you're lost. So when you're lost, you bring half of yourself to the table. You can't bring your full self. That's why you get depressed at work over a year or two. That's why you're like, this job just does not do it for me, because that's not where you're supposed to be. Your body, your temple is only built to be responsive to where it's supposed to be, not to where you create it. I'm gonna have to coin that. Wow. Okay. So anyway, that's exactly how that works. So over and over, when you job hopping, you're finding all these different jobs. You're finding yourself a lost person looking for something to fill the gaps until you find out where you're supposed to be. And that is if you want to find out where you're supposed to be. Or else you're just going to go ahead and shift your purpose towards retirement. In Romans 1:28, it reads, furthermore, just as they did not think it was worthwhile to retain knowledge of God, so God gave them over to a depraved mind so that they do what they ought not to be done. Now, again, why is that scripture applicable? When you will give you a mindset that makes sure that you do, that you go where you're not supposed to be. God wants to make sure that if you're going to reject him, you reject him all the way through. He will cast you out. This is where this pattern of gaslighting starts to come into play. Now you also have a mindset that God gave you over to. And again, once God gives you something, you better best guarantee it's happening. The only person that can reverse that course is you through a different decision. What goes through an employee's mind? Is this all that life has to offer? Have you ever been in that place? Have you ever sat there and been in the office and you're working all day and said, maybe on Friday, maybe even going in Sunday night, going into Monday morning, you're sitting in the bathroom or wherever you have your place of solitude. Is this it? Yeah, I worked and I pay bills. And you see that? You gaslit into yourself into complacency. No, it's not all that life has to offer. Where your purpose is, there's more to offer. But we'll talk about more. We'll end our series with more of that conversation here next week. I want to thank you guys for embracing what we're talking about today. I know it's tough. I know it's deep, but your strength is the fact that you wanted to listen to sound doctrine. Your strength is that you want to hear truth. And your strength is you want to find a breakthrough. So I love you for that. We'll get back in touch next week, but I have to get back to work. So we'll see you next time. Bye-bye.